Hi, everyone. My name is Liz Walsh-Treviño. I'm Director of Orientation and Transition Programs, and I am here with my colleague who you'll meet in just a moment. Her name is Andrea, and we are going to talk about what to expect at orientation here at Miami University. This is a part of the A Mug with Mitch series through our admitted parent Facebook page. And Mitch is not able to join us today, but we're glad to talk with you about what to expect at orientation. Andrea, will you introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Howard, and I am an Assistant Director in Orientation and Transition Programs, and we'll get started sharing what to expect throughout the orientation process.
Excellent. So for some of you, you likely have a student who has confirmed their admission at Miami University, and they're definitely coming here, and we'll be so glad to have them. And many others of you have students who are still deciding about whether they'll attend Miami University. And in either case, our goal is to share about the orientation process here at Miami. And I want you to envision your student sitting in a circle just like this on the screen. That's part of our orientation process, where student orientation undergraduate leaders, or SOLs as we call them, lead new students through the process of orientation, guide them, answer their questions, share important information with them, and go ahead and get them ready. Red Hawk ready is what we call it, ready for the fall semester. The orientation process is just that. It is a process. Sometimes we think of orientation as a single program or a single time of year, but really the process of orientation includes a lot more, and the transition to college includes a lot more. So what we'll talk about today is a series of online orientation modules that students will complete that sandwich an in-person on-campus orientation program that happens in May or June. We have 18 sessions that we'll tell you all about. We have a transition to college webinar series that is optional but provides greater depth into certain topics. We have Miami-bound pre-semester programs, welcome weekend and the first 50 days, and first-year experience courses. All of these components are part of the orientation process. Something I really love about our orientation process here at Miami is that it understands students really holistically, that it's about both academic and student life together, where at some college campuses, you will see those processes separately. And those are great programs too. But what we like to do here at Miami is really to understand the student from an academic lens and a student life lens, and help them to navigate the transition to college in both ways. If your student is confirmed and they're definitely attending Miami, they have what's called the new student portal. And for those of you who have students who will confirm soon or will confirm later, they will get this about 24 hours after they have put their deposit down. So this is what a new student portal looks like. This is just the top page. And this portal is something that will be really important for about the next 6 months or so. Students will be able to visit this portal to register for an orientation session, to see what placement tests they need to take. They'll have a checklist that looks just like this one in their portal that asks them to either confirm or change their major, register for orientation, and complete those orientation modules. And under this, there's a whole bunch of other information for new students to consider.
All right, so I do want to talk about our online orientation modules. So part one of the modules are completed prior to attending your in-person orientation session. And it is really focused on preparing for orientation, sharing about campus expectations and values, and the academic advising and registration prep piece for in-person. So in person is where students will complete academic advising. They'll meet with an advisor in small groups, and then actually register for your fall semester classes. That will take place in person, but there's a lot of information leading up to that that the students will need to know prior to meeting with their advisor in person. And that comes from part one of our online orientation modules. So students will receive information that is specific to their academic college in the modules that they'll work through prior to their orientation session in person. And then part two happens after sessions end. So that will open up in early July. And it's a review of orientation, information about student life at Miami, and then also some additional training requirements around wellness, active shooter, fire safety of that sort. So part one will be prior to your in-person session, and part two will be after that, but before the fall semester begins.
Great. Next up, let's talk about that on-campus orientation session that many folks picture when they're thinking about orientation. So we do have a 1.5-day orientation program here at Miami. There are 18 different dates to choose from between May and June. Orientation is required for students and is suggested or encouraged for at least one family member or parent. About 95% of students bring at least one guest with them to orientation. There are 18 sessions to choose from, like I said, and availability is on a first come, first serve basis. However, we do hold seats. So right now, if your student is not confirmed, we don't have all the seats published right now, so that we save plenty of room for those still making a decision. I will also say that sometimes students run into a scenario where they may be selecting a session and they want to come with someone they know or a potential roommate, and they don't see the same session available. That's because we actually have our sessions available based on major. And so every session has availability for every major. And at the same time, there might only be 4 slots for one major versus 6 for another, for example. And so sometimes that's why there's a discrepancy there. But it's really important to us that students are matched with the correct academic advisor during orientation. Like I mentioned earlier, our orientation process is focused on both academic and student life, and students will participate in academic advising. And the way that process works is students and their families, if they wish, will experience some of the academic advising process together. Students will have a large group session where they learn about Miami requirements overall. That's called the Miami Plan. Students will then meet with their academic college in a larger group as well, and they'll focus on college-related requirements. Then students are broken down into smaller groups, about 4 students per group, and those 4 students meet with an academic advisor. Family members, you're welcome to join that session as well. It's planning for the fall. We know you know your student quite well and the best really that anyone could. And then the advisor brings the expertise from Miami University, and together the advisor and a family member may support the student in that fall semester planning. Then on day 2 of orientation, students will meet with that same academic advisor they met with on day 1 and register for classes. However, in that time, family members will be doing a different part of the program designed just for family members. Now, I will also underscore that family members are really encouraged to attend orientation, but are not required to do so. Timeline-wise, orientation registration is open now. It opened just yesterday for students who have confirmed their admission, and students do need to select a session by May 19th at 11:59 p.m. on that day. Those sessions themselves will start at about 9:15 a.m. on day 1 of orientation that students select, and finish at about 12:30 p.m. on day 2. The first day does go until about 10 p.m., so students should plan to be available for that entire day and then through 12:30 p.m. on day 2.
Right, so I want to talk about how you actually register for your on-campus orientation. The process where you can start to see your new student portal and register for orientation is at miamioh.edu/orientation. When you go in there, you'll see your new student portal similar to what Liz had shown screenshots of earlier. And from there, you can start to select your session that you would like to attend. Students should take the lead on this. They'll need to log in with their Miami credentials, and we want to champion them to kind of take the lead on this process. They'll include their general information, their name, cell phone number, and then some more detailed information that we need to make sure that you're all set for your in-person session. And that includes AP transfer and CCP credit that is expected. So your students, when they register, they will be asked to include all of the details for AP transfer and College Credit Plus so that our advising teams can have that information and be prepared to have conversations about the credit that your students anticipate receiving prior to starting in the fall semester. That's really important because our advising team wants to review your student's profile beforehand and that they have all the information that they need and can prepare for the conversation to have during the academic advising workshop. You'll also be able to know any accessibility accommodations that your student or any guests that are attending will need for the program, so we can have everything set and ready for you when you arrive. And the form will also include guest information. Your student may not know right off the bat, or you may not know right off the bat, who will be attending the session with your student. About 95% of students do bring a guest with them, and that's okay if you don't know just yet. You can edit your orientation registration up until a week before your selected session. So you can always go back in and add guest information if you know exactly who's coming later on, as well as the AP transfer and CCP credit. So if you have new information that you gain over time, you can totally go in and edit your registration up until a week before your session.
All right, we're going to talk about orientation housing options. And before I do see that folks are putting some questions in the chat. We will hold on questions until the end of our presentation today, and then we'll be glad to take your questions. It's also helpful to use the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and that will allow us to keep track of those questions. Okay, orientation housing options. The bottom line here is that you do have options. The orientation schedule will go until about 10 p.m. on day 1 and start at 8 a.m. on day 2. And it's important to note that students are expected to be there so that they don't miss their registration time. So when you're considering housing options, you have the options of staying on campus, either at the Markham Hotel and Conference Center, in a residence hall room, or you can make plans of your own, whether you live close enough to commute back and forth to campus and you'd like to do that, or you'd like to have a hotel or Airbnb. It's completely up to you and your student. We do rent residence hall rooms out because students aren't here on campus, so we're able to give you access to those residence hall rooms if you would like to do so. Before we leave today, we'll make sure you have the link to do that. It's on our website at miamioh.edu/orientation. And a frequently asked question here is, what's the breakdown? What do people do? It's really about a third of students spend time on campus and stay overnight on campus. About a third are close enough that they commute back and forth, and then about a third choose to stay in other accommodations in the area.
Right. After our in-person sessions that take place in May and June, there's still opportunities to connect, even though you won't be on campus just yet. So throughout July and August, we'll host a transition to college webinar series. So the full list of the webinars will be available in June, so you can make a plan for which ones you would like to attend. They are completely optional, but it does give you the opportunity to go deeper into topics that interest you, connect with folks that work across campus and things like that. They will be recorded, so if you are not available at that specific time, you'll still be able to review the information and get what you need.
Miami-bound pre-semester programs refer to programs that are optional and are about the week before the official move-in day, which is Friday, August 23rd. Miami-bound programs are small in nature and bring students together around specific topics they may be interested in. For example, we expect to have a program called Miami-bound Equestrian, which is where students can come together, take riding lessons, have some social activities, and get to know other people who may be interested in the same thing. The full list of Miami-bound programs will be available in early May, and registration for Miami-bound programs begins on May 20th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. Again, these are optional programs. They are small in nature. Most of them are between 25 and 50 people. There is one that is slightly larger, but in general, they do have limited capacity. So if your student is really interested in a Miami-bound program, registering close to May 20th is probably a best bet. In this case, students do come to campus early. If they're living on campus, they will be able to move into their on-campus residence hall space if they participate in a Miami Bound program. And we expect about a quarter of the class of 2028 to participate in Miami Bound. A frequently asked question here is if Miami Bound has a cost, and it really depends on the program. Last year, we offered 19 different Miami Bound programs. Some of them carried a cost. For example, Miami Bound Equestrian carries the cost of the riding lessons as part of that Miami Bound program. Some or only the cost of moving in early. There's a cost to move into residence halls early per night. And so the program passes on that cost to the student. And in some cases, there is not a cost to the Miami Bound program because whoever the host of that program is has some funds that they're able to provide to students. Again, registration will open on May 20th for these Miami Bound programs.
Whether your student participates in a Miami Bound program or not, all 4,000 of our incoming students will be on campus and start Welcome Weekend on August 23rd. So Welcome Weekend will run from that Friday, August 23rd until Sunday, August 25th. That's the Sunday before classes begin. And Welcome Weekend is the opportunity to really engage on campus and acclimate and meet new people and all of that sort, and have a whole lot of fun. So Welcome Weekend will start on that Friday, and that event actually includes fireworks. It's one of my favorite parts of the Welcome Weekend experience, so your students can look forward to a really awesome fireworks show. But Welcome Weekend will include lots of different opportunities that range from large scale to also small scale opportunities. And this year, that is new, your student will get to craft their own individual schedule for Welcome Weekend. So there will be events and programs that take place that all 4,000 students will be participating in across campus in some capacity. And also opportunities that will be smaller scale programs and more interest-based that your student will get to select as they wrap up their in-person orientation session. They'll have the option to start making those preferences for what they want their Welcome Weekend experience to look like in August. And then from there, the first day of class is August 26th, and that starts first 50 days, which is a continuation of smaller scale programming that happens over the first couple of weeks on campus.
All right, next up, the semester will begin, but the orientation process doesn't end. Each first-year student, in fact, more than 95% of them, will take a first-year experience course. There's lots of different specific names for these first-year experience courses. One of the most common ones is University 101. It is a 1 credit hour full semester course where students are in a class. It's small in size, about 25 students who really focus on the topics that are listed on the screen here. So academic support, belonging, like finding friends and finding community here. Who are your mentors? Who is your network? We'll focus on academic planning, which includes, in addition to an academic advising appointment, for students, it also includes what are the tools to use and how do I actually plan out a schedule? Because when they plan for spring semester, they'll be doing that on their own for the first time without an advisor in the room while they register for classes. We'll talk about student life experience, things like undergraduate research, getting involved on campus, and then we'll talk about career development, which often surprises folks. We often get the question, why are we talking about career development in the first semester that a student's on campus? Well, students likely will apply to internships or student leadership positions pretty soon after their first semester. And one of the great ways that students can be ready for a career, no matter what it is to have a really great college resume. So we will focus on creating a college level resume during this first year experience course as well. And again, it's a 1 credit hour for a grade course that students will take.
Great. We do want to share about some frequently asked topics that you will probably have questions about. And the first one is about placement testing. So I'll start with math placement. So all of our incoming students should plan to take a math placement. Majority of them will need to complete a math placement test. The exception is students that are in the College of Creative Arts. So in general, all students should plan to need to take the math placement. It'll be available in mid-April, and then your student will be able to self-enroll and to take that. It will show up on your new student portal that you need to take the math placement. So your student will be able to log in and see exactly what placement testings they need. And when they complete it, it'll be checked off their list, so they'll be good to go. So they should plan on having to take the math placement. For the language placement, it's a little different. It's not required for everyone, but all majors in the College of Arts and Science and education majors with a language emphasis will need to complete a language placement. And again, that will show up on the new student portal to be able to go in and complete that if it's required for them, and it'll check off when they're good to go.
Yes, and we should note that these language placements and math placement tests are online when the student is able to take them. Next up, and I do see a question in the chat about this exact topic. If a student would like to change their major, they should do that right when they sign in to their new student portal. The first checklist item is for a student to either confirm their major or to change their major. And we know that there's lots of pressure put on our students to know what their major is going to be, and that can be a lot to think about. And it's okay for them to change their mind. So after a student confirms, they will have access to that new student portal that I showed you at the beginning, and they will be able to confirm or change their major. There are some exceptions to that rule. So for example, if a student has not been directly admitted to the Farmer School of Business and would like to seek admission, they won't be able to change their major this year, but typically after the first year, as long as they've met a series of requirements, they will be admitted to the Farmer School of Business, and we'll have a session about that at orientation itself. Another example is nursing. We're not able to have students switch to our direct admit program of nursing.
There is a question in the Q&A about class availability as you may attend a later session. And so the way that it works at Miami, there actually is not an advantage or disadvantage of attending session 1 or session 18. The way that it works, we hold seats in classes in common classes for first year students, and then those seats are released equally over every session. So whether your student attends session 18 and their roommate or a friend attends session 8 or session, if you attend session 1 and someone else attends session 18, they will have the same opportunities when it comes to course registration. So we encourage you to choose a session that works best for you. And if you've chosen one that's later in June, that is great. Your student will have the same opportunities as other folks in earlier sessions.
Okay, next up, let's talk a little bit more about any anticipated college credit that your student may have, which might include College Credit Plus if here in Ohio, or any sort of dual enrollment, AP courses, IB credit, military credit. In the orientation registration form, students will be asked for what their credit is and that they anticipate. In addition to putting it on the orientation registration form, we do need all official transcripts from all institutions or programs like College Board for AP that students are anticipating credit from. And those need to be sent directly to Miami University from that institution or organization. However, we ask for the information on the orientation registration form as well. And we do that because it helps the advisors prepare for your student to be successful in academic advising. One of the things that I want to note in particular is that some students are taking dual enrollment courses in their high schools, which might be labeled something like advanced English or college English. Awesome. That's really great. However, if it's associated with another college or a community college, we actually need to know what the college calls it. So instead of writing on the orientation registration form, my student or the student is taking advanced English, we need it's English 1100 from such and such community college. And that actually helps our advisors know what credit we can anticipate connected to
Hurry, hold on.
Miami University in particular. Okay. I'll repeat that just one more time. We had a little bit of noise there. So we need to know the student specific credit from whatever institution it's coming from. So instead of advanced English in a high school, we need to know that it's English 1100 or something from such and such community college.
Right. The last thing before we get to questions that you'll have, we do want to share our information about how you can get in touch with us. So as your student makes their decision and if they end up at Miami, we are excited to see them in May or June for an orientation session. There's lots of information on our website, miamioh.edu/orientation, that details everything, frequently asked questions, and more. And we do have a chat on our website, so you can feel free to send us a message if you have any questions, as well as our email and our phone number. You're welcome to contact us in any way that works best for you, and we'll get back to you and get your questions answered.
Okay, let's go through some questions that have been put in the Q&A. I will ask folks for you to use the Q&A feature versus the chat feature. It helps us to not miss anything. Let's see. What if an incoming student is undecided on major? Great question. And that's really a typical scenario. It's okay if a student doesn't know what their major is. They can choose exploratory as their program, and that means the student will meet with an advisor who works really frequently with students who are undecided in their major. It's called, again, exploratory. Or if they have a declared major right now and they're thinking of switching to one or two other things, generally how I advise people is to think about, are you more like, what kind of advisor do you want to meet with? Do you want to meet with someone who's in the program you already have selected, or are you hoping to meet with someone in a different program? If you're more than 50%, I'd like to meet with someone in a program, go ahead and choose that major so we can get you connected with the right advisor. In general, making a major choice at this point in the game is not an end-all be-all. There are some majors that are more structured than others. So for example, performance majors or theater majors in the College of Creative Arts are more structured. Engineering programs are a bit more structured than others. Education programs are a bit more structured, but it doesn't mean that you can't make a switch later down the line. And like Andrea said earlier, you can change your major all the way up to 1 week before your orientation session. Okay, a question about math placement. If the student has an ACT math score, is the math placement test going to be waived? And the answer is no. The math placement test provides another data point in addition to any previous math experience or test scores that allow advisors to have the best conversation with students and support your students best. So again, students in the College of Creative Arts do not need to take math placement, but everyone else does. It's a no more than 90-minute test that students take on their own. Specific preparation is not required, but it gives advisors more information to help guide your student, and that's really important to us. Restroom or shower arrangements and the residence halls. So if a student chooses to stay on campus specifically for the orientation residence hall rooms, there are private baths. The rooms are mixed. So like they're in the hallway. You do have to go out in the hallway, and then there's private baths. However, there are mixtures, like the room, anyone can choose to stay in the room. So let's say I rented out a residence hall room. It has 2 beds in it. And I can choose whoever else is staying in the other bed. It might be my parents. It might be a roommate that I'm hoping to have. It may be just me by myself. And then the room next door is the same thing. It's sort of rented out like a hotel is for the summer. Let's see, is it possible for a student to stay in the same residence hall room for orientation with the roommate they will be with for fall semester? Sure, it is arranged on your own. So one person would reserve that residence hall room and the other person would be their guest, but does not need to specifically reserve that residence hall room. Okay, I noticed you had to pay a $40 fee per person for orientation for meals. Can you opt out of that? And if not, are the only meals in dining halls or any food places, example, Armstrong Student Center? So yes, every person in your party for orientation will receive a $40 meal card. Those are billed to the fall semester bill for your student. It is not opt out in particular because that $40 is coming right back to you. It just helps with orientation logistics. So you're going to give us $40 on the fall semester bill. We're going to give you $40 on essentially a gift card that you can use any place on campus that sells food. And it is good through the fall semester. So if students don't use the whole thing or you don't use the whole thing while you're here on campus for orientation, you can use it in the fall semester. And it is good at any dining hall, in the Armstrong Student Center, or any of our markets on campus. If you have college credit plus math credits, do you have to take the math placement? Yes, please. Thank you. Math placement also helps you to be placed in certain science classes like chemistry or physics, if that becomes part of your plan. So that data point really does help the advisors. What is the cost of staying in the residence hall for orientation? We can go ahead and post the link to our page that has more information about this. It is $87.99 per night. You can choose as many nights as you need. And that link is live on our website if you'd like to go ahead and reserve that residence hall room. If a parent can only come to one day, which is more important, i.e. what one day will be with one parent, one day will have both parents. It really depends. So day one will include academic planning. It will include a lot more informational sessions. Students and families are together more on day one. On day two, students will register for classes and do a lot of student-only things on the morning of day two, while family members actually have like a conference style, choose your own adventure part of the day where they get to choose which sessions are most relevant to them as a family or to their student. Can CCP credits be reviewed at orientation for major credit if they bring the syllabus? That is not typically something that would happen directly at orientation, but if your student should include all that information in the orientation registration system so the advisor has it, but credit evaluation will not happen specifically at orientation. It is helpful for them to anticipate though, for sure. I see lots of questions here about does such and such get you out of the math placement test? And the answer to all of them is no. Students really need to go ahead and take that math placement test. And if they're experienced in math, it should go really well for them. Also, no one can fail the math placement test. It is simply evaluating where students are on their math journey so that they can be placed appropriately. There is one question to me directly about FAFSA. We have the same timeline as the news is reporting. We expect the information to come to us soon, but any specific updates would be communicated directly to you. Okay, I'm just scanning through here. Andrea, am I missing anything? Okay. All right, if you have individual questions, please do stay in touch with us and contact us through the means on our screen here. So either our website chat, our email directly is orientation@miamioh.edu, and our phone number is 513-529-9771. Andrea and I are both on the admitted students Facebook page as well, and occasionally we will pop in to answer general questions. We are not, however, able to answer questions specific to your student. Would like to do that more privately and more directly with you through one of these means, and we generally aren't able to connect with you via direct message either. So we will look forward to connecting with you on Facebook through any of these means, and then of course in person in May or June. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. And this recording will be available in a couple of days on Facebook as well. Have a great day.